Hi, welcome to another English language A-level video with me, Paul, from the QE here in Darlington. This one is about language diversity, and we're going to look at some of the newer accents and dialects which are coming into the language in the UK. We're going to start off with so-called MLE, Multicultural London English, sometimes rather disparagingly called Jafaican, usually by non-linguists and usually by older generations, who seem to be sort of indicating that there's something fake or artificial about it. Let me tell you, there is nothing fake or artificial about multicultural London English. So it's a dialect which emerged in London English probably in the early 1980s, and it basically started off in areas of London with very high levels of immigration. It's a kind of combination of all sorts of different immigrant groups, English, combined with traditional East End Cockney dialect. And it has some similarities with Cockney, but it also has some specific different sounds and different grammatical constructions. You may have heard expressions like, I was like, in expressions like, I was like, that was great. But in MLE, people often say, this is me, as in, this is me, let's get out of here. Okay, it's a so-called quotative. And you've probably heard grime artists and other people using the word man in quite a new way. So in MLE, this is a new kind of pronoun, and it means the same as the first person singular pronoun I. So you've got man, I've said about this is me. You've also got mandem and girldem as well. So mandem referring to men or boys or male friends. And then you've got girldem meaning girls or women. So inevitably, because it's a youth dialect, there's a great deal of slang in it. Words like fam, for example, ends or blood. You might want to go onto YouTube and watch the clip. There's a 10-minute clip called Multicultural London English, The One Show, which is really good actually. And what it does, it interviews a family where you've got the mother here who speaks a more traditional kind of Cockney English, and her son who very clearly uses this different multicultural London English. So that's well worth looking and making notes from. Okay, so I won't play you at all, but here we go. Here are some of the features of multicultural London English. In terms of phonological features, the key thing is that Cockney English has a lot of diphthongs, i.e. long elided sounds. So face, for example, or goat, gout. So you can hear the long vowel sounds there. So those are diphthongs. So in multicultural London English, they become monophthongs. So face becomes fess and goat becomes gut, like that. So it's a shortening of those vowel phonemes. You've also got the so-called goose vowel as well, oo. So the vowel sound in words such as food and true and crew. So they're pronounced further forward in the mouth, so food, true, crew. Okay, and this is happening in lots of varieties of English, not just MLE, but it seems to be more extreme in multicultural London English. You've also got, at the beginnings of words, TH stopping. So those words that begin with fricatives, those TH sounds, tend to be replaced by D or T sounds. So they, the, and their become they, dem, and dare. And three, think, and thing become tree, tink, and ting. Okay, so that's called word initial TH stopping. You've also got different pragmatic markings, things like you get me or in it, being used as a kind of all-purpose question tag. Okay, and then you've got slightly different uses of the as well, which I won't go into detail on. There's a good video on here that you can find on YouTube, Learn English with Stormzy, where a linguist looks at little clips of interviews with Stormzy to illustrate some of the main phonological features of multicultural London English. So that's well worth looking at. Also well worth reading is a wealth of material that you've got in your AQA textbook, which really begins on page 152 and goes right through to 157. So this is about these new forms of accents and dialects which are emerging in the UK. And there are two studies which have been commissioned by Gary Ives way back in 2014. And it's looking at the language of young speakers in Bradford, in West Yorkshire, and in London, and what they think and say about their language usage. Now, I'm going to leave you to be looking at the London section, but I'll just pick out some of the main details from the Bradford speakers. Okay, so the people that he interviewed were 8 teenage boys. They were interviewed about the way that they speak and the language that they use. And this is a part of Bradford where 95% of the students are from Pakistani backgrounds. Okay, so the majority of students are from a place in Pakistan called Mirpur. And Mirpur is a very large city that's surrounded by villages and farmland. It has lots of wide open spaces and dams and is part of Kashmir. So that's in the textbook here on page 154. So these 8 teenage boys, what sorts of things did they say about their language? Well, code switching. So code switching, which is defined as occurs when a bilingual speaker will use and alternate between different languages whilst talking. That's code switching. So that's what they mean when they say we mix Punjabi and English. So there's diversity in the language that are going on, the shifting between languages depending on who they're speaking to. The other thing that one of the boys said is that it's all about our area, with the emphasis on that first person plural possessive pronoun, i.e., as we've been looking at, say, on Labov's Martha's Vineyard study, language is really bound up with identity, and it's a way of staking out, where you are from. Another boy said we use a different language so they don't know what you're saying. So this is interesting because language is used most of the time is used to include people, but here he seems to be stating that it's used to exclude others. So again, you could make that linkage with Labov's Martha's Vineyard study, and also you could link it in with Howard Giles' accommodation theory, where he says that people naturally converge with others, but they might be in situations where they're doing divergence as well. Another boy said we might speak English to mum and dad, but with our friends we speak Punjabi. So it's interesting that you've got generations, you've got language being shifted according to the generation of the listener. And that might be contrary to your expectation, because you might have thought that these young speakers might be using their heritage language, Punjabi, with their parents and English with their friends, but it seems to be the other way around. The other thing they said about their language is they used language to distinguish themselves from freshies, freshies being people sort of newly arriving in the country and in the area. And also they said that language was important in distinguishing which area in Bradford that you were from, that basically different postcodes had different sort of brands of English, and it was mentioned about BD22 would be different and posh. Okay, so lots of material there about language and identity that kind of links in with the previous things that we've said. In terms of where these slang words come from, one of the boys said that a lot of it came from sort of rap and hip hop and urban music. And there's a list there on the top page 155 of some of these words like sick, heavy munch, shotter, swag, bear, blown, killed it. Probably all sounds pretty ridiculous with me saying them. So they were making the point that Punjabi is used often as a bit of a cryptolect, i.e. a secret language to create a group identity. But there was diversity of responses. So a girl of Indian background said that she didn't do code switching, so she never mixed English with her second language Gujarati. And the reason for that, she said, was that she was very much in a minority at school in terms of her heritage, so she was not likely to be using it there. Okay, so overall, this Bradford study by Gary Ives shows how language is really used to create a well-defined social identity. And there was agreement amongst all of the participants that teenage British Asians use the same sort of diverse forms of language, and they do it to be part of kind of social or friendship groups. And they felt that their Lexis was really had a wide mixture of influences. Yes, their Mirpuri heritage was important, but also there were many other things from popular culture. The films that they're watching, music, the internet. So, for example, the Asian comedian Jimmy Hardnails was mentioned. The postcodes that they live in, the fact that they're born in Britain, and of course their age. All of those things are having a massive effect on their language usage. Okay, so it's quite a nice study to be looking at. What I'd urge you to do is, if you've got the AQA textbook, to be reading the South London study on page 155 and 157 as a kind of alternative case study about these newer accent and dialect forms which are emerging in the UK amongst younger speakers. Okay, so once you've done all that, you probably want to review everything that you've looked at. So ask yourself these sorts of questions. What were Ives' findings from the Bradford study? Freshies, postcodes, slang influences, and code switching. And from the South London study, what seemed to be kind of like the distinctive words and the categories of words. What was said about the origins of MLE? Where does it actually come from? And what can we say about the kind of speaker backgrounds of MLE? Okay, in our next lesson, we will be doing further work on accents and dialects. Thank you very much.